The first thing I noticed about room 1412 was the smell. Starch and old lemons, a hint of dust beneath it all, like the memory of someone else's suitcase. I set mine on the luggage rack and watched it sag like a tired animal, the zipper teeth grinning at nothing. Outside the window, an anonymous city stacked itself in slabs of glass and concrete, reflected in its own rain. The panes quivered with passing sirens and the sigh of buses pulling away from the curb. When I unlatched the window a sliver, the air came in damp and metallic, tasting faintly of pennies. It had rained all day, and if the sky could be trusted, would keep raining through our keynote, our breakout sessions, our networking cocktails with badge lanyards and breath mints. The conference brochure, still folded in my pocket, promised transformative learning in an unremarkable ballroom 2 floors below. I could already see it. Round tables like lily pads, pitchers of water perspiring, the low groan of the air system, the clatter of cutlery from a buffet built to soothe rather than surprise. I stood in the middle of the room and tried to become a person shaped to fit such a place. I turned off the television before the looping welcome video could finish thrumming its slogan. I opened the closet and counted hangers. There were 6, padded with ivory satin, like each one a soft shoulder. I touched them all, and then I pulled the dress from the bottom of my suitcase, from beneath the business shirts and socks and a sweater I hadn't needed, and shook it out until it fluttered in the stale light. It was a dark green that changed tone like a mood ring, foresty in shadow, almost black close to the lamp. The fabric was not expensive, but it moved with a patience that made me think of riverweed swaying under a current. The hem grazed my knees. The neckline dipped with caution. I had tried it twice at home, once late at night and once in the afternoon when the sun made everything too honest. Each time I put it back in the tissue paper as if it were a contraband fruit I could not yet afford to taste. I laid it across the bed, smoothing the wrinkles with my palms. The bedspread was white, textured with a grid I could feel through the dress like ribs. The lamp on the nightstand had a shade that threw ovals of buttery light on the wall. It made the green glow. It made the dress look inevitable. I told myself I had only brought it to feel its weight during a week that had threatened to lift me out of my own skin. I told myself it was only cloth, that it did not know me, that it asked nothing. In the mirror, a stranger in a navy button-down stared back, shoulders tipped forward, badge lanyard already leaving a tender stripe. The initials on the badge felt like a costume, too. My name in a font chosen by someone else. The question of who I was threaded itself through the carpet, along the baseboard, under the closet door. Safer to think about dinner, I decided. Safer to order room service and let this day slide off the edge of itself. I sat at the desk and flipped through the menu. It had the same handwriting as every hotel menu, a voice that said, "We know what you want. It's the thing you always want. Cobb salad, burger with fries, salmon with a lemon something." I circled the salmon with the hotel pen, knowing I would change my mind on the phone. When I lifted the receiver, a woman answered with a cheerfulness engineered to be unmemorable. "Room service," she sang. "What can I get started for you?" "Tomato soup," I said, surprising both of us, "and the grilled cheese." "Comfort combo," she said, and there was a silence where we smiled at each other through the wires. "Anything to drink? An iced tea? Sweet or unsweet?" "Unsweet," I said, and I heard my mother's voice saying, "We aren't in the South. You don't have to specify." The woman verified my room number like a password to a gentler world. "About 40 minutes," she said. "The kitchen's backed up. Is that okay?" "Perfect," I lied, hanging up to listen to the rain fist the glass. I paced, because that was what my nerves knew how to do. My shoes left no sound on the carpet. It was patterned with small squares inside larger squares, a geometry designed to hide stains, a geometry that made my eyes swim if I stared. I traced my hand along the hallway in my head, imagined the ice machine without even opening the door, its cold, perpetual throat humming. That sound, like a mother's shushing, like an engine idling, had threaded through every hotel I'd ever stayed in. And here it was again, folded into the walls. I told myself I would do it after dinner, try the dress again. I would take it out, and I would stand in it, and I would tell the mirror, "It's simple, you see. It's just a different uniform, one that lets me breathe in a new way. I would practice the walk from bed to window and back. I would feel the hem on my knees. And I would sleep with the knowledge that my body could be arranged to reflect an interior weather rather than the one that had soaked the city. The knock startled me into a small gasp. I wasn't ready to be witnessed, even by a tray of food. The server was a young man with an apron, his hair combed into obedient lines. He rolled in the cart like a parade float announcing comfort. 1412? He asked, as if I might have changed my mind about the number. He parked the cart by the window and lifted the steel lids as if revealing tricks. Tomato soup breathing steam, grilled cheese cross-hatched with the marks of a panini press, a wedge of lemon for the iced tea, sweating. "Enjoy," he said, and I thanked him with the kind of gratitude reserved for strangers who bring warmth. When the door clicked, I stood there alone with the smell of childhood in a place engineered to erase the specifics of anyone's childhood. The soup burned my tongue in exactly the way I wanted. Cheese stretched from the sandwich like a small dare. I dipped and bit and swallowed, and something in my chest unclenched enough to laugh. The rain tapped time against the glass. My phone lit with a chorus of colleague messages. See you at the keynote tomorrow, dinner in the lobby bar. All of them a huddle of neutral emojis and corporate exclamation points. I typed replies that sounded like me if I squinted, and then I put the phone face down beneath the napkin, as if covering a birdcage. The dress watched me. Every few minutes, my eyes returned to it, the way my eyes had returned to certain posters as a teenager, as if they could answer for me what I couldn't ask myself. My fork clinked against the bowl. Outside, across the slick street, an office tower lit its floors like a slow-running zipper. A lone figure stood at one window, their shadow a soft stamp against the light. I wanted to wave. I wanted to ask, "Are you the only one awake in your life?" I took a breath that ran the length of my ribs, and I stood. There was no ritual. I peeled off the button-down and the trousers and the sensible work socks with their thin ribbing. I stood in my underwear, the kind I bought in bulk because that made choices simpler, and I stepped into the dress. The fabric was cool around my knees, then my thighs, then my hips. I pulled it up, and the armholes accepted me with such matter-of-fact grace, I lost balance for a moment and caught myself on the mattress. In the mirror, there I was, not improved, not diminished, simply shifted into alignment with an angle of light I had pretended not to see. The dress didn't fix anything. It didn't explode or heal me. It allowed me to recognize myself, the way pronouncing a word correctly in a language you were raised to understand but never taught can unlock a laugh from your own mouth. I moved. The hem swished. The straps obeyed gravity and the map of my shoulders. I felt delicate, not because I was breakable, but because I had chosen something precise. I walked to the window and watched my reflection overlap the wet city. I placed one hand flat on the glass until my palm grew cold. I turned off the lamp and let the room soften. The ice machine hummed through my wall, constant as a thought you keep walking around instead of through. I swayed because it was simply what the dress wanted, a slow sway like a heavy clock's pendulum. I whispered, "Hello," to the me who met me in the window and tried not to cry at how relieved she looked. The fire alarm sliced the air with a red knife. There was always that second where the noise was part of the television, an advertisement for antihistamines, or a documentary about opossums with weird sound design. Then the second where it continued, and my stomach took the elevator down without me. The ceiling speaker flashed its furious eye, and the door's metal bar throbbed with a stuttered light. The voice came like God in a parking garage. "Attention! Attention! A fire alarm has been activated. Please evacuate the building using the nearest exit. Do not use elevators." My first thought was the dress, not the soup, not the laptop open on the desk showing a spreadsheet frozen mid-formula, not my wallet or phone. The dress on my body, which had felt like a secret no one else deserved, became suddenly real in the way that mattered. Out in the corridor, doors opened like dull tongues. I could hear the hallway carpet swallowing footfalls, the hushed irritation of people pulled away from their shows, their room service, their showers. My heart tapped out a frantic code. I was a person in a dress, and the corridor was full of people who might know me tomorrow in the ballroom under bad chandeliers. I had 5 seconds to choose. Trench coat, and go, or hide and hope. The trench coat hung in the closet like a compromise I had made long before I packed. Tan, durable, a garment with opinions about weather and propriety. If I shrugged it on and buttoned it to my throat, I could be an outline mistaken for anything. I could follow the stream of humanity down the stairs and out to the curb, and be damp and anonymous, among the damp anonymous. Or I could wedge myself under the desk and pretend I hadn't heard. Pretend my survival depended on staying small. Pray that the alarm was a farce and that the smoke would be as imaginary as the fires I'd trained for in elementary school. I counted the seconds without meaning to. 1, the ice machine humming a tireless lullaby through the wall. 2, the rain pushing its flat hands against the window. 3, the hallway breathing other people into motion. 4, my throat a locked room. 5, I moved. The coat was an animal I tamed by slipping into it with practiced motions. The dress whispered as it settled beneath, an unseeable river. I grabbed my phone and my keycard and opened the door into a world where the hallway carpet stamped itself to my vision like the inside of an eyelid. The pattern's small squares, marched to the horizon of the elevator bank. A woman in a hotel robe hustled past, clutching a toddler who blinked under the strobe. A man with a baseball cap, pressed crooked over sleep hair, held the door open for his partner without pausing their argument about whether this city's hotel fire alarms were more frequent than usual. Eye contact was a luxury no one could afford under the voice that insisted, like a stern radio, that we not use the elevators. We flowed down the stairs, shoulders becoming a new kind of landscape. A young couple whispered to each other in a language I couldn't place because the alarm compressed every syllable into its own hard bead. My coat was too warm. The collar was a soft noose. On the landing, a colleague I recognized, Eli from the Denver team, beard like a contained wildfire, plaid always, glanced at me and nodded the small nod people give when they place you without naming you. If he knew the outline of me was altered, he didn't let it register beyond the same human acknowledgement we all traded like currency. We are here. We are getting out together. At the second floor landing, the door to the conference level swung open in a wave, and we were expelled into the lobby, which glittered with emergency in a new way. The ceiling lights jittered between steady and strobe. Behind the front desk, a woman with her hair wrapped in a scarf spoke into a phone with a focus that made me feel safe. Outside the revolving door, the city rain thickened, forming a bead curtain we had to part with our bodies. We spilled onto the slick sidewalk, a congregation of sleep shirts and socks, of suits folded over arms, of pharmacies' worth of toiletries held like relics. Someone laughed too brightly, a sound polished by nerves. Everyone tried to hover close enough to the awning not to be drenched, which meant we were pressed together, which meant I could feel the warm animal truth of strangers breathing. I stood near a planter filled with damp ornamental grasses and watched steam uncurl from my mouth. The trench coat made me feel like a spy who had lost my mission instructions under a taxi seat. The dress breathed against my skin, a fact as quiet and persistent as rain. The ice machine hum was gone, replaced by a different municipal tone, sirens lacing the dark like seams. A fire truck pulled up with a gravity that made the sidewalk shift its weight. Firefighters in turnout gear jogged past, and a man near me said, "Heroes," under his breath, with the same reverence as someone else might say, "meteor shower." I scanned the faces automatically for danger and found instead a soft curiosity. People were busy being wet. They were making jokes about evacuation timing and room numbers. They were pretending that the lobby sculpture looked like anything other than a tangle of welded aluminum. No one cared about my outline, or if they did, they were too polite to broadcast it. I realized I was shaking only when I steadied my hand against the planter and the grasses released raindrops like beads from a snapped bracelet. That was when I heard her. "Hey," she said. Her voice had that clean morning timbre some people are born with. "Do you need an umbrella triangle?" I turned. She was my age or a little older, hard to tell in patio light gone fluorescent. Brown skin, locks gathered into a loose bun, a coat that didn't pretend the rain wasn't real. In one hand, she held a collapsed umbrella. In the other, a lanyard badge that had twisted on its strap. The badge said Mara in the same font as mine. Under her name, the part that announced what we were supposed to sell to each other. Product strategy, Midwest region. She was smiling in a way that wasn't about me, exactly, but about sharing space in the kindest possible way. "What's an umbrella triangle?" I asked. "Two people, one umbrella," she said. "You stand shoulder to shoulder and tilt it so the point goes over both your heads, like a triangle." I grew up in a place where the rain was serious about its intentions. "I'm okay," I said, automatically, and then the rain found a gap in the awning and baptized my left shoulder to the bone. "I might not be okay." "Come on," Mara said, flicking the umbrella open with a practiced wrist that made it bloom like a midnight flower. There was a space under it, the size of a person I recognized as me. I stepped in, and the trench coat sighed with gratitude. "I'm Mara," she said. I said my name, and she nodded, the way Eli had nodded. Except he had been nodding at everything, and she was nodding at me. The alarm still bleated, the hotel doors churned, the firefighters vanished into the brightness of the lobby. The umbrella was printed with a constellation pattern that made the rain above us look like meteor tails. The angle of our bodies made us closer than polite strangers usually are. She smelled like citrus and travel, the little perfume you put on when you don't know what the day will be and want to be ready for whatever it decides. "What floor?" she asked. 14th, I said. 1412. 7 for me, she said. 7 and 17. I'm going to be annoyed if I have to climb that again. I realized with a jolt that I had not been breathing properly since the alarm began. I inhaled, deep enough to taste the city's iron. She looked at me the way people look at rivers when they decide to trust them. "Are you by yourself?" she asked, not the question people ask when they want something, but the question people ask when they want to make space for the truth. "Yes," I said, and then, because something in me had bent toward honesty so far it could no longer unbend, I added, "No. I mean, yes, I am. But I'm also not the only person in this body tonight." Her eyebrows lifted in interest. "You want to say more," she said, soft. I looked toward the hotel, where the lobby doors breathed in some of the wet crowd and exhaled them again. Red strobes painted the marble in heartbeats. I touched the trench coat's lapel, felt the hidden river of the dress beneath. "I'm wearing a dress under this," I said, so quietly that the rain almost took it. "I've never worn it outside." Mara's eyes were the kind that didn't feel like they were being kind at you, just for you. She tipped the umbrella so its point caught more of the spray and we leaned closer under it, the triangle adjusted for confession. "How does it feel?" she asked. "Like recognizing a street you've only ever dreamed," I said, and it came out before I could censor the poetry of it. She grinned, pleased not by my cleverness so much as by my relief. "Is that your alarm?" she asked, gesturing with her chin toward the building. "Is this it, then? The world sending you a drill?" "I don't know," I said. "I had 5 seconds." "You made a move," she said. "That's a lot in 5 seconds." We stood laughing inside the triangle we had made, while the hotel did its theater of emergency. People lit cigarettes under the awning like they were performing a period drama. Someone took a photo of their wet ankles. The rain became a character as well, less an antagonist, and more the stubborn chorus. The firefighters re-emerged, and the alarm's volume seemed to shiver. The manager in a suit 2 shades darker than his eyebrows appeared with a clipboard and an apology that broadcast itself down the length of the sidewalk. "False alarm, folks!" "Everything's fine. We're so sorry for the inconvenience." A cheer rose, ragged and sarcastic and affectionate all at once. People shifted from survival stance to mild complaint stance in a heartbeat. The umbrella shook above us like a bird settling itself. Mara angled it toward the revolving door. "Shall we?" she asked. We moved together, the triangle collapsing and reconstituting around corners. Inside, the lobby's terrazzo floor wore the footprints of our evacuation, a temporary map of panic. I felt the trench coat heavy on my shoulders again, suddenly. The elevator bank pulsed with people who regretted their 7th floor rooms. "You go ahead," I said. 14's gonna be a while. "I'll wait," she said, and then, at my look. "What? I want to witness your after. You don't have to do anything. I'm just standing here with a small galaxy over our heads." The elevator arrived and we sank into it with 5 other damp humans. The mirrored walls gave us back our shapes slightly warped, as if we were all underwater. No one made elevator jokes. which felt like an achievement. The doors opened on 7, and Mara squeezed my hand, a quick, brave pulse, and said, "Find me tomorrow and tell me how the rest of the night went." "Or find me now if you need me. 7:17. I began, but she was already laughing at my stutter and slipping out, her umbrella dripping a neat circle onto the carpet. The doors closed like a theater curtain, swallowing her name. On 14, the hallway was a penumbra of leftovers. The strobe had stopped, but my eyes still carried it like an afterimage. A woman in silk pajamas stood outside 1409, teasing her dog with the end of a key card, both of them giddy. Somewhere down the hall, the ice machine resumed its unbothered hum, either unaware or deciding it had done enough to make this hotel feel consistent. My door unlocked with its green wink, and I entered my room like I had been allowed back into a dream. Inside, the soup skin had formed a shy veil. The sandwich had cooled into a rectangle of resignation. The window flashed with the city's arguments with itself. I shrugged out of the trench coat as if it were a verdict, and the dress welcomed the air as if it had been waiting to breathe. I stood for a moment and felt the full shock of being exactly where I was. The alarm's aftertaste retreated from my tongue. My heart stopped sending semaphore and returned to its steady drum. I moved toward the window and placed my hand on the glass again. The cold was sweeter this time, less a flinch and more a communion. The dress fell around me as if guided by an intelligence older than fabric. Gravity, trust. I walked from the window to the bed and back, practicing the distance between my solitude and my witness. I turned on the lamp and watched the green shift from forest to black and back again. I sat at the desk and wrote my name on the hotel notepad in different handwriting, testing ink I hadn't tried. I stood again and spun once, deliberately, childlike, just enough to feel the skirt flare and settle. In the bathroom mirror with its Kender light, I watched my shoulder soften where the strap lay. I touched the place where my collarbone discovered itself. I thought of Mara's umbrella constellation, of the triangle we'd formed and the way we'd chosen to live inside it for 10 minutes. "Find me tomorrow," she had said, "or find me now if you need me." My phone offered the option to do either. The room offered me a night of practiced isolation. The rain offered me an alibi. I could walk the hallway and ride the elevator and stand under the awning in my trench coat like a person who needed to breathe cool night air. The ice machine hummed a hymn that had no words and didn't need them. I opened the closet. The coat looked smaller now, no longer an animal, more an object in a painting about weather. I reached for it and then stopped. I reached instead for the Do Not Disturb placard and hung it on the inside knob as if it could keep out my own fear. In the mirror, my face surprised me by looking both older and younger than I felt. Room 4112, I thought. This number in a city that wouldn't remember me, and yet it will be stitched into me like a secret pocket. I imagined what Mara's room might look like. The same art print above the bed, a black and white photograph of a bridge that could be anywhere. The same ice bucket, unloved. The same menu pretending its salmon was different from every other hotel salmon. I imagined her sitting on the edge of her bed, untwisting the umbrella's damp wires, laying it near the AC unit to dry, her badge tossed on the dresser. I imagined her texting a friend back home, some quick line about a stranger she held under plastic in the rain. And I felt in my bones how tender it is to be held under anything with someone, to be permitted to press into your smallest space and have that space expanded by witness alone. I took a breath that widened me. The hallway carpet waited like an unspooled film. I cracked the door and listened. Voices receded. Somewhere a television resumed its laugh track, a canned hilarity that didn't touch us. The ice machine hummed, a faithful generator. I stepped out. The corridor had a way of taking your measure. Its lighting was engineered to make your edges behave. Nothing harsh, nothing allergically soft. My bare legs prickled in the conditioned air. The thought came clear as a bell. Don't apologize for taking up the space you take up. This wasn't a slogan from a workshop. It was a sentence my body had been trying to say to me for years. I let the door click behind me and began to walk. Down the hall to the elevator, past the dog who had lost interest in the keycard and curled into the silk pajamaed woman's lap. past the janitor's closet with its cracked door through which I could see the mops turned into waiting horses, past the ice machine alcove, which breathed cold and persistent, pushing its little square doors open and shut as if gasping in sleep. I stopped there for the ritual I had promised myself. I pressed the lever and heard the ice tumble, blunt and almost violent, into the bucket I didn't carry. The sound filled the lack of container with itself, and then stopped. A single cube skittered onto the carpet and melted into nothing, leaving a small circle of darker geometry. My heart, recognizing ceremony, quieted. A man came around the corner in gym shorts, shirtless but wrapped in a towel like a sash. He stopped short when he saw me, and in that breath I lived a century. He blinked, adjusted his towel with a motion that was pure habit rather than judgment, and said, "Sorry, is the machine working? Our floors is out." "It is," I said, and my own voice did not tremble. He smiled, grateful. "Great," he said. "Thanks." He disappeared into the alcove. I walked on. I pressed the elevator button and felt brave and stupid in equal measure, which I have come to believe is the evidence of most worthwhile choices. The doors opened and I stepped into the chrome cage that had carried me down into alarm and back into quiet. I pressed L for lobby and 7, because my hands had their own truth. The elevator began to hum, its cables like old violin strings. On 7, the hall smelled faintly of chlorine, as if the pool were hiding around the corner. I walked to 717 and lifted my hand to knock, then let it fall. I listened. The air conditioner in her room clicked itself on, a soft startle. The rain worked its way into the seam of the window and told its small, metallic story. I knocked. It was not a brave knock. It was a question. There was a shuffle, a pause, and then her voice through the door, lighter than outside, but no less steady. "1 sec." The chain slid back. The handle turned. She opened the door fully and smiled with her whole face. Not an exaggeration, but an opening. She was in a t-shirt and shorts, her locks let loose around her shoulders. Her face changed when she saw me. Not in shock, not in a performance of acceptance. She simply registered who stood there, and her smile repositioned itself as if to say, "Ah, there you are." "Hi," I said. "Hi," she said. "You look like yourself." Something like laughter and tears tripped over each other in me. "Can we talk?" I asked. "Of course. Come in." She stepped back, her hand a gentle ushering, no pressure. The room smelled like the hotel and also like the citrus I'd noticed and also like something else I couldn't place. Maybe a candle she'd brought and left unlit, something grassy. I stood just inside the doorway, suddenly shy, and she folded herself onto the small sofa near the window like someone prepared to listen. She didn't come closer. She didn't touch my arm. She made space the way you stack blankets for a guest, letting them choose how many they need. I told her, not the whole story, not the childhood or the teenage years or the first time I practiced a new name in the car at a stoplight. I told her about this week, in this city, in this room. I told her about the dress in tissue paper and the window that wouldn't quite open and the ice machine in the wall and the soup that had skinned over while the alarm taught me to move. I told her I had chosen the trench coat and then chosen, afterward, to unbutton it. I told her the thing I had learned in the space between sirens and rain, that concealment and safety are not synonyms, and neither are exposure and danger. She nodded like a metronome set to my sentences. When I faltered, she made a sound. It took me a minute to realize was agreement in another language, soft and encouraging. The rain drummed the window, insistent and patient. We didn't talk about the conference. We didn't trade resumes or LinkedIn handles. We stayed in the square of light that the lamp gave us, and we let it be enough illumination. She asked if she could get me a glass of water, and I said yes, grateful to hold something. The water tasted like the hotel, and I loved it for that. At some point, she said, "Do you have a name for how you are in this dress?" And I said a name, the one I'd begun to use in the privacy of my car and my shower and my grocery list. She repeated it back, and I believed her. There was a moment, there is always a moment, where the air shifts toward something else. Our knees inch toward alignment. The rain softens. The music the city plays for itself goes from urgent to conversational. She looked at me with that morning voice in her eyes and said, "May I talk nonsense for a second?" I laughed because the nonsense had already saved me once tonight. She gestured toward the window. Sometimes I imagine the rain is like rehearsal. The city practicing being washed and being heavy, and sometimes it's the show. Tonight feels like the show. It does, I said. The dress touched my skin. The ice machine hummed, far away, a reminder that there were thousands of small machines working to keep us comfortable, to keep us alive without our attention. Can I ask you something? She nodded. When you saw me outside, if I had said I needed to be alone, would you have let me? Of course, she said, without flinching. Of course. Witness doesn't mean crowding. It's just standing under the same small roof. The relief that slid through me was not dramatic. It was a sheet pulled over a bed, smoothing out the creases. I placed my glass on the coaster designed to look like marble and stood. The carpet under my toes was another pattern, striped this time, sober, tidy. I stepped closer and she didn't move, which was an invitation. She stood, too, leaving enough space for my decisions. The question was not if I could be seen. The question was, how did I want to be seen? I reached and she met me halfway, and the hug we made was the kind of hug that keeps pride and fear and laughter and sobs all in view, a hug calibrated not to fix but to affirm. My face found her shoulder. Her hand drew a line up and down my spine, not claiming me but reminding me where I was. Thank you, I whispered into the cotton of her t-shirt. Anytime, she said, and I knew she meant tonight, and also others, and also the nights we'd never share, when I would be alone in a different city with a different rain, and would still be under the umbrella of the way she had looked at me, as if the world were new and also ancient and also exactly the same. When I stepped back, something in me had rearranged itself to accommodate more light. She saw it. I saw her see it. We should sleep, I said, suddenly tired in a way that wasn't defeat, but restoration calling my name. We should, she said. You can text me tomorrow if you want to grab coffee before the slog. I will, I said, meaning it. I walked to the door and paused with my hand on the handle. Mara, I said. Yes? You have a very good umbrella. She laughed. I know, she said with mock arrogance, and I carried that laugh down the hall like a talisman. Back in 1412, the soup was beyond saving. The grilled cheese gave up its last warmth in a thin sigh. I slid the tray into the hallway, a small offering to the gods of late-night housekeeping. I washed my face and watched the water pattern itself across my cheeks like a different rain. I pulled back the bedspread and slid under, the dress whispering against the sheets. I wore it to sleep, because I could, because the ice machine hummed like a lullaby again, because the city rain softened at last into a hush that felt like permission. I closed my eyes and saw the hallway carpet, its tireless squares. I saw the umbrella constellation. I saw a triangle of safety that required two people and a choice. I allowed myself, finally, to cry, the quiet kind that doesn't rearrange your face so much as reveal it. The dress took the tears like another form of water and held them until they dried. In the morning, the window was a rectangle of pewter. The city had a hangover of puddles. I stood at the glass and waved at my own reflection, a small joke, a small promise. I texted Mara a coffee cup emoji and a question mark, and she responded with a location pin and the Mobego pin and the word downstairs. I could have chosen trousers and the navy button-down and become the person I knew how to be in meeting rooms with indifferent carpeting. I could have chosen the trench coat without the river beneath it. Instead, I chose the dress and a cardigan that once belonged to a friend who had taught me that style can be a hand extended to your future. In the elevator, a woman with a tote bag that said, "Books are my love language," complimented the color and meant it. In the lobby, I watched the revolving door attend to its endless small physics. The rain had not stopped entirely, but it had softened into a mist that made the streetlights look younger. Mara sat at a table in the corner, her umbrella propped like a companion. She lifted her cup in greeting, and I went to her, and the room called itself a room where I could be. The ice machine hummed on, a floor above us, a faithful ghost. The carpets, lobby, hallway, memory, held what they had been given. Outside, the city rain practiced and performed and practiced again. We leaned over our coffee and talked about nothing and everything, which is to say we talked about how to continue being alive. And that was how room 1412 became a place in my body, the way your grandmother's kitchen can be. or the exact curve of a park bench you kissed someone on and then never saw again. It was the place I was when the world asked me a question, and I answered by stepping out, by drawing a triangle under a constellation with a stranger at the curb, by standing in the lobby's false marble and deciding that safety would be something I made rather than something I begged to borrow. It was the place where an ice machine hummed and a hallway carpet swallowed my footsteps, and a city's rain pressed its palms against a window, letting me know it was out there, always ready to wash me clean and make me heavy and make me new as many times as it took.